Trump stooge and former failed presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy recently appeared on CNN to defend the disgraceful and disgusting comments made at Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally, not only those made by other Trump stooges and a comedian, but by Vivek himself. And the CNN host called out the lies that Vivek was pushing and a couple of others in what was just a perfect takedown of him and Trump. The interview went pretty badly, pretty quickly for Vivek, and I cannot wait to get into it all. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you enjoy our channel and want to support it, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way. It really means a lot to me. Now let's get into this incredible takedown of Vivek Ramaswamy right here.
The Trump campaign press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, on Fox earlier saying the joke doesn't reflect the views of President Trump or our campaign, specifically talking about the Puerto Rico joke. But also she said the crowd, they didn't mind. You were there. Did you mind?
Look, the fact of the matter is I wasn't in the room when that joke was made, but I got to say, we got to take a step back and look at the double standards here, Brianna. Let's be really honest. George Lopez made a joke at Kamala Harris's rally over the weekend about all Mexicans being thieves. Are we attributing that comment to Kamala Harris or querying all of her proxies who were at that rally? No, we're not. So I think we need to all get off our high horses and acknowledge that a bad joke was told. It was bad because it wasn't very funny. The audience didn't find it funny. The guys told other funny jokes in other places. This wasn't one of them. But the media manufacturing of outrage out of this is really just a double standard when you look at the exact kind of jokes being told at the Kamala Harris rally over the weekend. And the fact is, if George Lopez had said that at the Donald Trump rally, if I may finish.
You've seen a comedy show before?
If I may finish, just to finish making the point, if the George Lopez joke had been told at the Donald Trump rally, you and I both know we'd be talking about that. But because it was at a Kamala Harris rally, we're not saying a word about it. And I think that that's just hypocritical.
I think that if your comedian were Mexican-American, it might be different. I mean, you're familiar with, I'm assuming you've been to a comedy show. You're familiar with these things. If someone is of South Asian descent or they're Mexican-American and they tell a joke about the group from which they come from, things can land a little differently. And we heard these jokes. There is a group, certainly, that the comedian belongs to, and he didn't really joke about them that much. So I think that's something to note as well.
The funny and most remarkable part about this is the audience didn't love the joke. They actually booed, and it says a lot about the audience's response to a bad joke. On the other hand, this is a comedian who roasted Tom Brady famously as well, so everybody knew he was a comedian. Let's also take a step back and ask what else was going on during this same rally, or focused on this early warm-up speakers. Frankly, most people didn't even know he was going to speak early on in the rally. The whole time, Tim Walz is doing a live stream, calling the people in Madison Square Garden Nazis. Where's the apology for that? I was in the room. I was there the entire time. There were multiple Israel flags held up in the audience, not exactly the material of a Nazi rally. And I just think that this media game isn't healthy for the country, where we airlift some comment, this time that didn't even come from Donald Trump, not even when Donald Trump was in the building. But a warm-up speaker at his rally makes one joke, but a comedian at Kamala Harris's rally makes at least one that's even more offensive in the other direction, and we're not talking about it. I think that we have to be able to really take seriously what Donald Trump and Kamala Harris say versus jokes of some comedian.
He made it in his own direction. But I will tell you that the comedian certainly overshadowed a lot of people making statements, and that included yours. You were there. You said this. This was part of your message last night, and I want to discuss it with you.
What does it mean to be American? It means we have elections we can trust and believe in, and that means single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday with paper ballots and government-issued ID to match the voter file. That's how we save the country after we win it this time by voting early.
So voting early is okay to use to win for your guy, but then you want to get rid of it?
I think you got to play by the rules you have in order to change them to what they should be. Just like people should pay taxes as required by the tax code, who may otherwise favor changing the tax code. The same applies to the way we conduct elections. And if I may for a second, you brought up Puerto Rico before. I actually love Puerto Rico. I've spent a lot of time there. One of the things I've done in my studies of the island, meeting with leaders there, is understand how they conduct elections in Puerto Rico. And I think we have a lot to learn from them, where they do have single-day voting on Election Day as a holiday for the island. They use paper ballots and other election security measures that we don't use in the United States. So for our part, speaking to Puerto Ricans, what I want to say is we have a lot to learn from Puerto Rico, including the way they run elections. But yes, we have to win this election in order to get there. And so play by the rules we have legally to the fullest extent allowed. And then, yes, I think it could be civic and unifying, in civic unity for the country, to say there's one day we take apart from our daily drudgery of our day to say we're doing our duty to our country and we're united as a consequence. But that's not happening this election. We need to win this election. And that's why I do think it is not only okay, I would encourage people this election so we can win to vote early to change the rules to what they should be.
Even on national holidays, some people will still work. We see them working. Sure. We see them. If you're so concerned
for that. Of course, we have exceptions for people who are working like emergency workers or otherwise. But the basic premise, as Puerto Rico does it, if you're so concerned about,
Vivek, if you're so concerned about paper trails, are you aware who has the biggest lack of them?
I don't follow the premise of the question, Brianna, I have to confess.
If you're so worried about paper trails.
Yes.
Like, is this like an issue that you're talking about, or are you aware that it's a few counties in Texas and it's all of Louisiana? I mean, are you talking to those folks? Have you talked to the leadership in those localities, those states where there is no paper trail at all, let alone paper ballots, and said, hey guys, maybe fix this?
So look, here's something you and I can, I think, agree on. I think you and I would agree on this. The crisis of public trust in our elections is a real problem. And if we can shore up that trust in a way that says we're done, nobody wants to be complaining. Certainly I don't want to be complaining, or anyone on my side to be complaining about stolen elections or election integrity. The easiest way to move it forward is to do it the way that Puerto Rico does it today. And I think that many countries do it this way. We've done it this way in the past with respect to paper ballots in our country. I don't think government-issued ID should be controversial.
But you know, most people have paper ballots.
If I may finish, Brianna, the fact that many people find government-issued ID requirements to be controversial is actually what breeds that mistrust about election integrity in the first place.
Okay, I do
that
just want to be clear.
IDs are themselves controversial reveals a real issue.
Most people, there is a paper ballot, and there is a paper trail, that the process by which they're doing it generates a paper ballot, a paper trail to show how they have voted. So this idea that like a bunch of people are voting and it just kind of goes off into the ether, that doesn't happen. We're talking about
Brianna,
the vast majority.
You didn't hear me say that.
I didn't interrupt you, sir. The vast majority of people. So it's sort of, I'm just curious because it seems like also to the point of the ID, this idea of like non-citizen voting, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections with threat of prosecution and deportation as a deterrent, which may be why it just doesn't happen in any meaningful number, including in your home state. I just wonder, in both of these cases, are you promoting a solution to solve problems that don't exist?
I'm promoting a solution to address a problem that does exist, which is the loss of public confidence in elections against the backdrop of voter fraud that is real.
Well,
Nobody's
why do you
denied
think
the
there's
existence.
a loss in confidence?
Nobody. Whoa. You just said you weren't interrupting me, and then you're interrupting me, Brianna.
Well,
if I
now
may finish answering the question.
Because we're running out of time. Why do you think there's a loss in confidence?
I think there's a loss in confidence because there are unknown numbers of illegal migrants in this country, and I think there's a big loss of confidence because people object to the idea of using voter IDs, the same IDs you're required to drive a car. Why is it objectionable to use that to actually be a requirement to vote? The fact that people call that racist to shut down debate, yes, I do think that breeds public mistrust.
I do. So I'm going to interrupt you because best practices.
I don't want complaints about election integrity. I don't want us fighting over stolen elections.
Include cross-referencing votes with the DMV and Social Security to make sure that that doesn't happen. I do just want to be clear. You're talking about this idea of like all of these imaginary illegal immigrants who are voting. It's just not true. Texas, there was this point where they had thousands of people they identified as non-citizens. Turned out they had become citizens. They actually had to settle because of what they did there. Georgia, the Republican Secretary of State, they identified 20 non-citizens who had registered to vote. Out of 8.2 million, 9 of them had voted. All of them were sent to law enforcement. And in Ohio, your state, out of 8 million people, law enforcement is reviewing 138 people who cast a ballot for possibly, that hasn't even been confirmed. I get what you're saying, but these numbers are not meaningful.
I've heard these cases.
You spend a lot of time talking about a problem that is so minuscule, it doesn't affect outcomes.
I actually don't. The challenge I would give you, and to anybody who shares your view, is explain why voter ID laws are controversial. Why is it racist to have a voter ID law? And the fact that people are using racist allegations against the simple premise of having a driver's license to vote is what is breeding public mistrust in our elections. And I'll make a pledge to everybody in this country, Republican or Democrat. If we get to voter ID laws that match the voter file and have single-day voting on Election Day as a national holiday, I'm done, and anybody else in the Republican Party should be done as well, and the Democratic Party too, in complaining about election integrity. Do it the way Puerto Rico does it, and if they do it in Puerto Rico, we can do it in the rest of the United States, and turn this page so that we're not talking about this issue. But the fact that voter ID laws are themselves controversial with the left reveals that there is a real issue here, that if a voter ID law is deemed racist and you're not even allowed to talk about advocating for that without undergoing this kind of grilling, that reveals a real issue and loss of public trust that I do believe we need to fix to unite this country. That's my hope, and I do think a solid victory, which we are not debating on November 6th, for either candidate, I hope it's Donald Trump, is something that will unite this country, and that's what I'm rooting for.
Well, I think it's because the consequence that I certainly hope from your perspective is inadvertent, is that it discourages some people who have the right to vote from voting in numbers that far eclipse what you're talking about solving with this non-existent problem. But
I respectfully
Vivek
disagree with
Ramaswamy,
that, just as it doesn't deter them from driving. But I think that that's a reasonable discussion for us to have in good faith rather than dismissing voter ID laws as racist. At least that's a constructive step in the debate.
I don't know. I didn't say it was racist, so I understand. Maybe you're having
yeah.
a conversation with someone else about this, but it's not me.
In Georgia, countless leftists have, yeah.
Vivek Ramaswamy, thank you for being with us.
Just a plethora of lies to be picked apart and called out. And I think the host did a really great job giving some pushback there. My favorite moment of her saying, Vivek, I didn't interrupt you. You're not going to interrupt me. All these Republicans think that because they know they can't, actually make a cogent argument, that the best thing that they can do is talk over the host, and always love to see that shut down. And we're going to be doing more of that shutting down of those MAGA lies on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.